currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's live edition. It is Sunday, January 13th, 2013. And today, on my live broadcast, I'm going to get into something that a lot of the regular listeners have emailed me and asked me about, because a lot of them recognized a certain professor's name in the news over the past couple days and have asked me to address it, and if I was going to address it. And I have been getting my ducks in a row the past few days. As you all know, I don't like to just jump on things. I like to, if I take something on, take it on with logic and reason and have enough intellectual ammo to win said argument and be able to dispute any counter-argument against it. I don't like to just blindly run into things. That's not how I roll. So I've been giving it a few days, and I wanted to line my, get all my ducks in a row, like I said, line everything up. And I know Professor Tracy, as some of the new listeners might not know this. And if you don't know who he is, I'm gonna get into everything. But just for openness and full disclosure, as some of the listeners know, I know who Professor Tracy is because I've spoken at his class at FAU in Boca Raton, Florida, called The Culture of Conspiracy. Some of his students are my listeners. I actually gained some new listeners because of his class. And there are people, there's a lot of good people out there. And it's not just, they would have you believe that he's just affecting the young minds. But when I was in there, there was the different times, there was this broad, diverse age group, from, I would say, 18, 19, and all the way up maybe into people in their late 50s in some of the classes. So there's more than just kids, vulnerable minds. There's a lot of people seeking the truth. Anyway, you've heard me talk about Professor Tracy and how good of a guy he is, and I know him personally, and that I can vouch for him. Well, I've been surprised over the years that he wasn't attacked already. So when I saw his name in the news the other day, it really wasn't any surprise to me. And when I didn't want to just jump on it and say, oh, I know him, he's a good guy, blah, blah, blah. I wanted to see why they were attacking him, the angle. And luckily, you guys will be able to actually hear his whole opinion on it later on this week. I'm sitting down with him Tuesday off air, and I'm going to record the interview, and then I'll play it live for everybody later in the week. But you're going to get to hear Professor Tracy's side of the story and what he has to say and his view on things. But last week I was able, during Friday in the afternoon before I went live in the evening, I was able to interview one of his students who happens to be an editor of the university newspaper, and he's a writer for Lifestyle Magazine down here in South Florida. So you're going to get to hear what he has to say from a student's perspective, someone who's been in the class and someone who's actually on the ground at the university who can, let you know. I don't want to spoil it. You're going to hear him. Just our conversation alone shoots down the mainstream media because he gives you the back end story and shows you what happened on the back end. But first, I want to give a little bit of an explanation as to who Professor Tracy is in case people don't know. And I'm going to play, to do so, I'm going to play the clip from CNN that Anderson Cooper did attacking the Sandy Hook conspiracy, they call it, or the Sandy Hook conspiracy theories. And they did this hit piece on it, and they opened it with an attack on Professor Tracy because at the time, obviously, he was a hot ticket item in the crappy news cycle. And you'll hear me get into that with Ryan, who's Professor Tracy's student that I interviewed. But I want to play the Anderson Cooper clip first, and I'm going to end up stopping it and ripping it apart. But I want you to hear their garbage attack on him. And then I want you to hear Ryan, who's an actual student and who actually witnessed the one episode where the mainstream reporter whipped some student up into a frenzy, and then the kid walked into the class and confronted Professor Tracy, and Professor Tracy, totally disarmed the situation and calmed everything down using logic and reason within a few minutes, because that's how he is. I mean, he gets you to think. He does his job. I'm telling you, there should be more professors out there in colleges like James Tracy. If you're a college professor and you hear this broadcast, okay, you could only hope to have the balls that guy has. And yes, I'll say it straight and to the point, just like that. He's got a brass set that wouldn't fit in a dump truck. It takes courage to go speak about what he does during his class. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, he doesn't just go into his class and say, oh my God, the government did 9/11. 9/11 was an inside job. Oklahoma City was an inside job. Run in fear, hide in your closet. The Illuminati are coming to get us. That's not how he presents it at all, which you'll hear Ryan talk about it. But he uses logic. Professor Tracy sits down. He also shows him the other side of the story too. He also shows them a skeptical side of the story. He shows them different viewpoints on the matter and says to them, you make your mind up. Open your mind and do the research and look for yourself and come to your own conclusions. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what a teacher is supposed to do. That's what a college professor, a good college professor, one that is on top of his game, one that is doing his job correctly, not worried about politics or kissing butt, but worried about actually informing and enlightening people. I don't like to use the term educating because that kind of goes along the lines of programming and putting your own thoughts in someone's head. James Tracy urges his students to enlighten themselves. He shows the horse where the water source is and says, there's the clean stream. You choose if you want to drink from it. At least he shows them that stream exists. How many brainwashed professors out there don't have the courage to do what this man does? I mean, he has a class called Culture of Conspiracy. It really does. I don't think people understand the courage it takes to do a class like that on a university nowadays. Look at how he gets attacked. For a blog post, I may add, on his own personal blog that had nothing to do with this class. The media are the ones that are trying to tie it together and make an issue out of, which I think is kind of ironic considering what his class covers. His class covers media and exposes media bias and things. And here you have a perfect physical example of his class coming true. His students actually get to watch the media act like he has said they act. He doesn't have to point fingers and accuse or make the media look stupid. They do a perfect example and a perfect job of that on their own. It serves as a perfect example of everything he's taught. And I get into that with Ryan, and you'll hear all that. But we got a break coming up on us, so what I'm going to do when we come back, I'm going to get into the Anderson Cooper clip so you can hear this few-minute little snippet that CNN, how they attacked him. I want you to hear their asinine argument, and then you can hear the reality of the situation. And I'm going to have to stop it and diffuse Anderson Cooper a few times, but that just is the way it is. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Debunking the mainstream media attack on Professor James Tracy. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. I'm going to start playing this clip from CNN and Anderson Cooper the other night. Mr. Keeping Them Honest, right? Okay, Anderson, don't mention the fact that you're a Vanderbilt or that connections to the CIA or anything else like that. But no, you're Mr. Keeping Them Honest. He. Okay. See, he's a perfect hatchet man. He comes on with that smiley, giggly face, perfect hair. He gets you to trust him, and then that's when they have people like him, instead of having someone like Piers Morgan go at him and attack him, raw, right? Because people would then look and go, wow, Piers, you're just being a dick, just like he is with everybody else. No, he's one thing. He's focused on the gun control itself. But they have Anderson Cooper do this special on the conspiracy theories of Sandy Hook, which, by the way, I find it interesting that if the conspiracy theories don't mean anything, and if the people are crazy who are putting all these things out, right? If everybody's a kooky nut job, woohoo, conspiracy tards, right? If that's the case and that's really how things are, then why do you feel it necessary, Mr. Anderson Cooper and CNN, National News Network, right? Communist News Network, Comedy News Network, really. Now, I guess, Conspiracy News Network, because you're talking about conspiracy theories. So why do you find it necessary to spend the time and money to attack this? Unless maybe, perhaps not all of them, but perhaps some of the things that have been speculated upon maybe have some merit. I know that at the very least, the red flags that have been brought up have merit, Anderson. But I guess that would be too much to actually ask you to do some real reporting, right? I guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to get 30 seconds into it. I'm going to have to stop it and yell at him.
Well, we begin tonight, keeping them honest, with a story that is frankly hard to believe. You're going to want to sit down for this one.
Bam. Not even, 7 seconds into it. Appeal to emotion. First logical fallacy. 7 seconds into the clip. First logical fallacy. Appeal to emotion. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have to sit down for this one. Trust me. A crazy, kooky college professor. See how he starts it off? Appeal to emotion. You have to pay attention. You have to understand the trivium, ladies and gentlemen. It's very simple, and once you understand it, even the basics of it, and you watch this garbage, you can tear it apart with your eyes closed just by listening to it.
Nearly 1 month to the day of the horrific shootings in Newtown, Connecticut, in which 26 people were killed, including 20 children. Tonight, we expose a number of people who are claiming that the Sandy Hook shootings were staged. Now, there are always conspiracy theorists lurking online who come up with some horrifically outrageous claims. And normally, we would not dignify these kind of claims with our airtime. These claims are obviously sickening to many in Newtown who have spent the past 4 weeks crying and consoling, burying friends and family members, trying to figure out how to restart their lives. As I said,
now you see 40 seconds into the clip, and his whole argument is based off all of emotion. Getting you to emotionally connect to the victims of the massacre. Not that they're not important, but as a newscaster, as a broadcaster, he's not supposed to be doing that. You should be, technically, if you're doing your job correctly, you'd be presenting the information in an unbiased fashion, and he's not. He's already framing the argument, and he's using the appeal to emotion as a basis.
Normally, we wouldn't even mention these conspiracy theories. But it turns out one of the people who's peddling one version of this conspiracy theory is actually a tenured associate professor at Florida Atlantic University, a state university that gets taxpayer money. His name is James Tracy. This is a picture of him. This is what he looks like. James Tracy is his name. Now,
you see what he did? You see how he did that? It gets a state school that gets taxpayer money. Then they throw Professor Tracy's picture up on the screen, and he says, "This is James Tracy." This is James Tracy. As if he was reporting that Professor Tracy was a pedophile or a terrorist or a crazy person. You see how they frame it? That is not being a journalist. There is no journalistic integrity in this report at all. We're 1 minute and 1 minute and 1 second into the report. This is what I mean about the mainstream media.
He claims the shooting did not happen as reported and may not have happened at all. Here's what he wrote on his personal blog, and I quote, "One is left to inquire whether the Sandy Hook shooting ever took place, at least in the way law enforcement authorities and the nation's news media have described." Tracy makes the case, if you want to call it that news organizations and the government may have worked together to dupe you, the public, in order to gain support for gun control laws. He even is suggesting that the government may have hired trained crisis actors to aid in this ruse. That's right, trained crisis actors. He's not convinced the parents whose children were killed are really...
Now, I have to pause it because you see how Anderson is framing the argument again? Minute 43 into this clip. Minute 43. And he keeps staging it. He, him, Professor Tracy, he, him. It's James Tracy, it's James Tracy, it's James Tracy. You know, if you actually go read his blogs, he didn't say this is exactly what happened or this is exactly what happened. He pointed out the inconsistencies and the red flags. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. But I had to stop and show you because it's important. Cooper is trying to frame the argument in a certain way, so that way, once he frames it and he puts it in the context that he wants, he can then attack it. It's called a straw man argument. And he's using other logical fallacies to help push the straw man argument, such as the appeal to emotion. Oh, these people are very clever, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I decided to take the whole 2 hours today and destroy this and debunk this. By the time 7 o'clock rolls around, you're going to see this is all garbage. I guarantee you. Not that most of you already don't know that this is all crap, but I promise you, for those of you that might not know or might be on the fence, you'll be convinced by the time I'm done.
Who they say they are. In his blog, Tracy, again, a professor, suggests they may have been, and I quote, trained actors working under the direction of state and federal authorities and in coordination with cable and broadcast network talent to provide tailor-made crisis acting, end quote. Tracy even cites a company called Crisis Actors that provides actors to use in safety drills and the like. Apparently, that is supposed to bolster his case. Now, by the way, there is such a company, and they are appalled by his comments. In a statement today, they said, and I quote, "We're outraged by Tracy's deliberate promotion of rumor and innuendo to link crisis actors to the Sandy Hook shootings. We do not engage our actors in any real-world crisis events, and none of our performances may be presented at any time as real-world event or as a real-world event." Now, when a local reporter caught up with Tracy...
Yeah, no, this is the part I was talking about. But before I air this little snippet here, okay, it's important to note that Professor Tracy is not, again, he is not saying any of this. He didn't sit down at his desk and come up with all these theories by himself. He put together research done by many different individuals in a single spot and said, hey, this is the weird stuff. You know, basically, this is the red flags. You know, is this a possibility that they could have done this to, push for tighter gun control? Yes, it is a possibility. I know people don't want to admit that, and oh my God, that's horrific. How horrific that he could actually say that, how could Professor Tracy, such a horrific individual, how could this college professor, how could he say that? Well, I don't know, maybe if you look through history, you'd understand why he would say such a thing. I said this to Ryan Cortes, who's going to be my guest. He was the guy I interviewed. He's going to be the audio I play later this afternoon. But I said the same thing to him about it. And look, it's just a complete, I don't want to say hatchet job because that sounds hacky. It's a sophisticated attack on Professor Tracy's character for having the balls to stand up. And what they figure, if they can make an example out of him, perhaps other college professors won't have the courage to stand up the way he does. Well, I urge every professor out there that sees this, Do the exact opposite. Be inspired by Professor Tracy and have the balls that he has and stand up and do something and try to fix things. We're going to break. We'll be right back. When we get back, more with Anderson Cooper. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you stay tuned in all day today after my broadcast gets off the air, 7 to 9. You got the Freedom Link Radio with Joe Joseph and Mr. Timothy Watts. And today is Sunday, so you all know what that means. Conspiracy Chronicles. And those two never fail to bring their A game, especially when it comes to the Conspiracy Chronicle episodes. They do a crap load of research. So do yourself a favor. Make sure to tune in 7 to 9. Then, of course, just stay tuned in 9 to 11, because then you have Mr. Ken Hildebrand, my boy, my buddy, one of the most hardcore, pissed off, curmudgeonly old Marines I know. And I love his take on things, even if I don't agree with everything Ken ever says. Ken's fun to chat with. He's fun to debate. And let me tell you something. He's one smart dude. And he's got the New World Order, or the Dark New World Order, or whatever you want to call them. He's got the scumbags nailed down. And it's interesting. I've watched Ken's awakening, coming from when I first met him. He was a little bit neoconish, and now he's grown so much. So make sure you tune into his broadcast, The Information Nation. Love you, Ken. I know you're listening, buddy. My buddy. Ken's like we call him Uncle Ken here at the network. He's the crazy uncle that was in the Marines during Nam that you don't want to piss off at Thanksgiving because he might go haywire, and you definitely don't want to give him the knife. Love you, Ken. Just busting your chops. All right, ladies and gentlemen. I want to get back into Anderson Cooper and his attack on Professor James Tracy. And there's not much left to it. Only a few more minutes of enduring this horrible garbage. And then you'll be able to hear my interview with Ryan Cortes. But first, you must hear at least what the media is putting out there, right? You have to have an idea of what they're saying. Give you both sides of the argument. Trying to be fair.
I asked him about this outrage. His theories might trigger. Here's what he said. Listen.
You had 20 families that were mourning, that buried children. Are you concerned about that at all?
Well, I think that the entire country mourned about Sandy Hook. And yet, once again, the investigation that journalistic institutions should have actually carried out never took place, as far as I'm concerned. I think that we need to, as a society, look at things more carefully. Perhaps we as a society have been conditioned to be duped.
Now, I don't even really know what that means, what he is saying, what the words coming out of his mouth mean. To suggest the reporters on the ground didn't work to find out what happened there on the ground is beyond crazy.
Well, hold on a second. I thought you just said, Anderson, that you had no idea what he means, and that you don't understand, and then you roll off with to suggest. Well, then obviously, if you have a suggestion of what maybe he was thinking, or you're trying to at least put that point across to the people that are watching this garbage that's coming across the communist news network, right? Or the crap news network, whatever you want to call CNN, because it's all garbage, right? So you're gonna, you know what? I'm just gonna play the clip because I'll run out of time going off. I really will. This is just a perfect example of garbage reporting. It really is. Really, Anderson. Perfect example. I actually applaud you for doing this broadcast because you make my job so much easier. And I would say Professor Tracy's as well.
Everybody asks questions, but that's what we do. Journalism isn't a perfect science, of course. But to suggest that somehow means the shootings didn't happen, that 20 children weren't killed, that families didn't suffer. And
all he suggested is that it didn't happen the way it's being told. And perhaps maybe it didn't happen at all, but that would fall under the category of not happening as you were being told. That would be a subheading or a subcategory, Anderson. Again, as an educated college man, you should know this. I didn't go to college. I'm self-educated. I'm self-taught, and I know this. So I know you know. With all that money your family has, I'm sure you got a decent education. I'm sure you know about this, buddy. Don't play it off. See, again, this is how the media tries to frame things.
Aren't still suffering is beyond comprehension and obviously deeply offensive to many. As we said, Tracy is not the only one spinning conspiracy theories on YouTube and online. This is from a website whose name I'm not going to use because I frankly don't want to give them extra traffic. Some are even claiming that 6-year-old Emily Parker, killed in Sandy Hook, didn't actually die. Now, as proof, they point to a dress, the dress she was wearing in a family photo before the shooting. It's the same dress that Emily's little sister wore when President Obama met with victims' families. So the people online, these conspiracy theorists, are saying that's actually Emily on President Obama's lap. It's a sickening claim, obviously. There's no other word for it. And there's another one on another website I'm not going to name either. They even use an interview that Noah Posner's mother, Veronique, did on this program to make its point. Here's some of that interview before I tell you the absurd theory. Watch the conversation I had with her first. How are you holding up? I mean,
most of the time I'm kind of numb, you know. I think about, and I think every mama out there can relate to the fact of how long it takes to create a baby, those 9 months that you watch every ultrasound and every heartbeat, and it takes 9 months to create a human being, and it takes seconds for an AR-15 to take that away from the surface of this earth.
Now, this website says that Veronique Posner appeared way too composed, that she wasn't crying, her eyes weren't red, and that's not how a grieving mother looks, which I gotta say is just among the most ridiculous things I've heard. I mean, I've interviewed so many people in grief. I've experienced grief myself. And to say that there's one way that someone should grieve is beyond ignorant. Now, unless you frequent these types of conspiracy websites, you probably never see them. And again, we would never mention them. But James Tracy, here he is again, is, as we said, a tenured professor.
Now, you see what they did? Neither of those two websites that they were mentioning were Professor Tracy's. Otherwise, they would have showed you the website he would have mentioned the name, right? Because they've done it on other broadcasts, not just CNN. Other news agencies have talked about it, and they've mentioned his website. In fact, I don't know if Anderson, I don't remember if he did or not, but he might even mentioned Professor Tracy's, the name of the blog, right? His personal blog that's not connected to FAU. Again, I have to stress that. And they're trying to lump him in with these other two conspiracy websites. You see what they did? They talked about Professor Tracy. They stopped. And they talked about these other conspiracy theories, these theories that are being postulated by people. Not Professor Tracy. He's not in cahoots with them. He doesn't call them. Okay? But you see how the media, see how Cooper is framing it? As if Professor Tracy runs the conspiracy websites or has something to do with it. He's trying to make a connection between him and all these other websites so that now he's a kooky, crazy conspiracy theorist. And now, back to the shot of Professor Tracy where he's kind of got like a smirk on his face, and they frame it so it's small, and then when they show it, now they show the picture. What does he say? Here's Professor Tracy's picture again. This is what he looks like. As if he's a criminal on the run. If you see him, you must shame him. That's ridiculous. Do you see how the media tries to control you? That alone should piss you off, that Anderson's trying to get you to have an emotional reaction against somebody else for no reason at all, other than to push his agenda or to attack that individual. Doesn't that make you angry? Do you have any personal stake in getting angry at Professor James Tracy? I don't think you do. But the media will damn sure make every opportunity and they'll take advantage of every opportunity and make every effort to try to push that in you and try to make you have an emotional reaction to Professor Tracy and what he's talking about. Again, appeal to emotion. It's how they frame the whole argument.
At a public university, taxpayers pay part of his salary. In Newtown and beyond, his comments are triggering intense outrage, as you can imagine. In a statement, Newtown, Connecticut First Selectman Pat Lodra took aim at Florida Atlantic University, saying, "Shame on you too, FAU, to even have someone like this on your payroll. I can assure you, sadly, that the events here in Newtown unfolded exactly as are being reported, with a horrible outcome, the violent death of 26 innocent people, including 20 children." Now, we invited Professor Tracy to come on the program. He's a professor. He talks in front of students. We would think he would be willing to defend his thesis. He declined. Our invitation stands. John Zarella, our reporter, went to try to find him. John joins me now. So you went looking for this guy, this professor.
And when they go to John Zarella, or whatever the hell his name is, they go to him. He's shaking his head like, he's got his head down. He's giving that nod like, yeah, we tried to get in touch with him, Anderson. He's just, nodding with kind of looking down at the floor like, yeah, with that, yeah, the guy's a dirtbag, that kind of look. Remember, a lot of this reporting is acting. It's about body language, and it's about how they come across, not just with what they say, but with what they do with their eyes and their face and their bodies. It's all acting, ladies and gentlemen. We'll finish up with this garbage report from CNN when we get back, and then we'll get into some actual factual reporting with Ryan Cortes. We'll be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Let's finish up this quote-unquote, doing air quotes, report by Anderson Cooper on the conspiracy theories surrounding the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. And, of course, the first part of it, at least the first 7 to 10 minutes of it, is an attack, like almost half of it is an attack on Professor Tracy alone. And as I said, they were trying to frame it. When we went to break, you heard me interrupt it. Anderson and their reporter, one of CNN's reporters, are feigning disgust and I guess professional, whatever you want to call it, anger at Professor Tracy for not wanting to come on the broadcast. I mean, after all, he's a professor of communications and he teaches media and stuff. Why would he not want to come on? This is a media broadcast. Well, perhaps, Anderson, because he's smart enough to know that you would ambush him, cut his mic off, and make him look like a moron. Or if you tried to do a pre-recorded interview, then anything is game. You could cut it up and make him look like he said green Martians are coming down from outer space and they're going to run the country and we can't do anything. We might as well give up and join them. And that's the kind of crap that they do. We all know they do because I've seen people get interviewed. I've seen the live interview where CNN interviews them, right? We've been videotaped it with my camera at certain occasions. Down here, even at protests and stuff, you'll see the mainstream media, whoever's around, they'll do an interview, and you see it live. And when you see it on the TV, if they're not literally streaming it live from on the ground, if it's been a pre-recorded package, they call it, it's edited. A lot of times they make people look stupid. They'll take, out of a 5-minute interview, they'll take a 10-second snippet. So yeah, Professor Tracy's smart for not coming on, Anderson, because all you guys would do is set him up and attack him. So I applaud him for having the intelligence to not walk into a trap.
Sir. And again, we like to offer people a platform, and if they have an argument which is valid, we want them to express it and see if it actually holds up to scrutiny. You caught up with him. What did you learn?
Yeah, and Anderson, we absolutely tried again today to get him to come onto your program live this evening, or at the very least to give me an interview on camera to explain his positions. And Professor Tracy said that he just was not willing to do it at this time. So we went to his house this afternoon, and he respectfully declined to come outside and meet with me or talk with me at all today.
And by the way, I think it's despicable that you guys went to his house and purposely walked up and down the street with the cameraman focusing on you, whatever your name is, Mr. Reporter, walking past mailbox numbers and focusing just enough that you can see the mailbox numbers. That's despicable. That really is despicable. And if anything were to happen at all to Professor Tracy or his house or his lawn, the air surrounding his house, if I were him, I would sue you and CNN for everything you people own for doing that. How dare you do that? How dare you go to his house? You know what? I call on the alternative media to go to Anderson Cooper's house and this guy's house. We should go to your houses. We're going to show up at your houses at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to ask you about being mainstream media shills and what it's like to work for the dark New World Order and what it's like to push an agenda that at the end of and after it's been set into place, you're going to be tossed aside and thrown away like the trash you are. You bootlicking scumbags. How dare you go to his house? How dare you? You show the street. You show it on video. I know what that's about. I would consider that a veiled threat, and if I were Professor Tracy, I would seek an attorney and I would sue you people. I'm willing to bet there's some attorney that would find some legal precedent to nail you to a wall for that crap. That's despicable. Because he wouldn't come on and walk into your trap. He had no problem setting up an interview with me. It's because he knows I won't trap him. He knows I won't ambush him. He knows I'll give him a fair interview. Disgusting.
He did say during 2 telephone conversations I had with him today, during the first conversation I had with him, he said that he would provide me an email response to some of the criticism that he has.
And of course, real player for some reason has to crash. Let me see if I can get the clip going. No, of course it crashes. But I can't even stand the rest of it anyway, so maybe it was forces outside of my control intervening, so I don't have to hear it anymore. Professor Tracy puts out, and he emailed the guy back, and it says, "I apologize for any additional anguish and grief. My remarks, and how they have been taken out of context and misrepresented may have caused the families who have been," and I'll play it here a little bit. So I can get through. Oh, here you go.
Placing him in a severely negative light. He goes on.
All right, it's back. So basically, he before it crashed, you heard he was talking about the email that Professor Tracy sent out, and he responded. And hopefully, the audio's not too cut out too much, and you'll be able to hear what he said. But he said, he basically said that what he said was taken out of context, and it was turned into sound bites and little headlines, which is exactly what the media does. And then now they're acting like they don't do that. It's exactly what you guys do. It's like the woman who shot the guy in the basement the other day. The guy broke into her house, and she was on, I guess she called 911, and she called her husband, or her husband called 911, whatever, and she was in the basement or the pantry, whatever the hell you want to call it, with her kids, and she had a gun, and the guy opened the door, and she shot him 5 or 6 times. She shot 6 times, hit him 5 times, I think. And then the guy still got up, ran out of the house, and collapsed. You know how they reported that? Trigger-happy woman shoots man in face 5 times in front of children or something like that. So something to that effect. But it was trigger-happy woman or trigger-happy mom shoots man in face 5 times. Trigger-happy woman. Trigger-happy. She was trigger-happy. She was defending herself, you scumbags. You see how they reduce it to sound bites and headlines. So he's right. And these guys are criticizing him for calling the media out like they don't do exactly what he said they did.
To say he's confident he's put forth questions befitting any decent and reflective citizen, journalist, or scholar. And he concludes by saying, "I apologize for any additional anguish and grief my remarks and how they have been taken out of context and misrepresented may have caused the families who've lost loved ones on December 14th. At the same time, I believe the most profound memorial we can give the children and educators who lost their lives on that day is to identify and interrogate the specific causes of their tragic and untimely demise." End quote. Anderson?
So I know you also asked the president by the way, what is he a professor of? Is it like media studies or something?
Yes, in communication. He's in the Department of Communications. That is correct.
Okay. Interesting, the guy who's in the Department of Communications does not want to communicate to the media or address this in the media at all. But you asked the president of this college, of this university, FAU, about it. What did she tell you? Are they standing by him?
Right. We talked to President Mary Jane Saunders, and they are clearly distancing themselves from Professor Tracy.
We want to make it very clear that he was speaking as an individual. He was not speaking in his role as a professor at FAU, and the university has a very different statement about the shootings, the terrible tragedy that took place in Newtown, Connecticut. The university does not support this position, and I personally am heartbroken about the additional stress to these families at this time.
Now, there's no word on what the university could or would do, Anderson. He is a tenured professor, as you mentioned, and in fact, the blog that he writes on is not in any way affiliated with the university.
Now, look, people are free to express themselves as they want, but I think, if he's a legitimate professor, he should be willing to defend his statements. And again, I just want to reread what he said.
If he's a legitimate professor, he should be willing to defend his statements. So his legitimacy is based on whether or not he'll come on your garbage broadcast and get ambushed by you and the rest of the staff at CNN. Yeah, well played, Anderson. Again, he's trying to frame it that if you don't go on his show, you must be illegitimate and your argument is invalid. everything here, ladies and gentlemen, this whole argument that you've seen here in the first hour is one logical fallacy after another. It's a giant straw man argument, okay, framed using an appeal to emotion and then backed up with many different logical fallacies, including ad hominem attacks, to bolster the support. Because a straw man argument is he can't debate Professor Tracy and say, well, what do you think is shady? Well, there's news reports about this or there's news reports about that. No, he picked some of the crazier sounding stuff that Professor Tracy he didn't postulate these theories himself. He didn't come out or sit in his basement, with a bottle of whiskey like a crazy, kooky, tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theorist and come up with. These were, and I'm not saying that's what the guys who put them out there did, but these are other different blogs. And he tries to frame it that he's a crazy, kooky conspiracy theorist with tinfoil hat, and he tries to connect everything to Professor Tracy. And if he was really a legitimate professor, blah, 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 blah. I'm not even going to give this any more time because I got hour 2. I got to give I want to give hour 2 to my interview with Ryan Cortes so you can hear what we had to say. But now you see, perfect example.
This is Sparta!
The mainstream media is garbage. I just destroyed Anderson Cooper's argument using logic. I didn't yell, scream, or nothing. See? Very simple, ladies and gentlemen. All right, hour 1 up, hour 2 coming up. Don't go anywhere. When we get back, hour 2, I'm going to play my interview with Ryan Cortes. Don't go anywhere. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on today's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. And today I am debunking the mainstream media attack on Professor James Tracy from FAU down here in sunny South Florida. And if you haven't heard hour number 1, I urge you to go back later on and listen to it in the archives or on YouTube or wherever and check it out, because I completely destroyed CNN and, for that matter, any other mainstream argument, because they all use the same garbage talking points. I destroyed their argument and their attack on Professor Tracy. Now you're going to get to hear from Ryan Cortes, who is one of his students at FAU, and I interviewed him the other day. And it's pretty much going to take up the rest of hour number 2. So I want to play it, and coming in and out of the breaks, I'll let you know when the breaks are coming up. But I want you to hear this interview. And ladies and gentlemen, it's important to remember that even if you do not think that Sandy Hook, there's anything shady, even if you buy the official story, right, and you don't think there's a conspiracy. And as I said, in the beginning, I wanted to take my time and look at things. Now, from my viewpoint, I still have to look into it further, but from what I've seen, there's a lot of red flags and a lot of shady stuff. So, I mean, at the very least, it warrants a very deep look at everything that is being mentioned. And remember, free speech isn't about what you agree with. It's about the right for somebody to say something that you don't agree with. Okay? Because and if you don't agree with somebody and you say, well, I don't like what they said, they shouldn't be able to say that, you should ban that. Well, what happens when somebody doesn't like what you have to say? Then you get banned. It's the same thing. So even if you don't like what someone has to say, you should stand up for their right to say it. It doesn't matter. That's the way it is. That's what free speech is about. Anyway, I want to get into this interview. Here you go. Ryan Cortes. You've all heard me talk about how I support free speech no matter what, and you've all heard me talk about how, even if I don't agree with somebody's speech, them having the right to say it is important, because then if I disagree with their right to say something, my speech can be taken away as well. In this case, a college professor who happens to have an open mind and teaches students to have an open mind, in his off time has a blog, and he's being attacked for the material he posted on his blog. Now, it's not like he went on his blog as a professor representing the university. This was a personal blog, his own spare time. He wrote this article, and it pertains to the Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre. And he does not believe that the official story is the way things actually went, and he's just questioning it. He's actually not even trying to come to any definite conclusions. He's just pointing out some really glaring red flags. And the man has been attacked. I've spoken at his class. His name is Professor James Tracy. You've all heard me talk about him on air before. I said that he is an example of what a college professor should be.
I've said it multiple times. You guys have heard me talk about him over the years because I've spoken at his class, I think it's 3 times now. And he's under attack. James is under attack hardcore. I've decided to sit down with one of his students. And he's not just a student of Professor Tracy. He is a journalist in his own right. He's the senior editor of the University Press at FAU. And he also writes for Lifestyle magazine. So he's not just some Johnny-come-lately, know-nothing student. The guy's got a good head on his shoulders, and he's very grounded, and he's open-minded, which I respect that. And he interviewed me the other day for a piece on that he was writing really quick, just a commentary piece about the situation, what's going on right now concerning Professor Tracy. And I wanted to have him on to get his opinion about the whole situation. I wanted to have him on to get his take on how he sees the demonization of what Professor Tracy said and, the attack on free speech. And then I want to get his take as a student of the class itself, culture of conspiracy. I want to get his take on what he's taken away from the class itself and what he, how he feels about the class and, the other students perhaps learning from it, and how he feels about Professor Tracy having the opportunity to even present this class, which I've said is amazing in itself. I'm surprised that a college or a university would even allow a professor to teach a class about the subject that he does. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, if you happen to be in the Boca Raton area or South Florida area and you are going to FAU, I urge you to sign up for any of Professor Tracy's classes. Now, I don't make any money for that. He doesn't pay me. He doesn't give me a stipend for saying that. I guarantee you'll learn something. But enough from me, Jabberjawn. I want to get into it with my guest. His name's Ryan Cortes, and as I said, he is the senior editor of the University Press, and he writes for Lifestyle magazine. Ryan, welcome to the broadcast, my friend.
Thanks for having me, man.
So let's start off with the drama. I'll pick your brain about the class in a few minutes, but let's start off with the obvious elephant in the room. This drama going on with people attacking Professor Tracy. Now, you're a student at the college, so let's start from the beginning. How many days ago did this thing blow up into what it is? Because, he's had his blog for a while. So, in fact, the last time I spoke at the class, I even said I'm surprised that nobody's attacked him yet publicly. What's your take on the drama, and how did it start? And then we'll go from there. Like, how many days ago did it blow up, and what was the reaction on campus the day it turned into this mess?
Well, there wasn't a reaction necessarily on campus when it first came out. And what's interesting is he's written 4 posts on the matter. The first one on Christmas, and 3 of the 4 posts didn't really get a reaction in this way. And the three of the 4 posts were just sort of pointing out media inconsistencies with the story, questions left unanswered. And then his 4th post was the one that blew up, and that was sort of the one where he said, okay, all this stuff looks fishy, so one could surmise X and Y. And he never said, I think X and Y. He just sort of said, maybe this happened. Maybe there were actors trained. Maybe this was under a guise of gun control talk and that sort of thing. And once that post came out, a few days after, the Sun-Sentinel wrote about it. And since that moment, this has just turned into a giant media storm. And you don't really know how the media cycle works until it happens to somebody you know a little bit. And I've taken 3 of his Professor Tracy's classes. And I could just see in all the media coverage the laziness. It's just really easy to write a story that says FAU professor thinks Newtown was a hoax. And then it just starts this firestorm of people commenting, calling them names and mudslinging. And to me, the most interesting part out of all of this was when he told me, and this is how I ended the column, he's gotten between 12,000 and 15,000 views on the post, which, yeah, that's a lot for him. But, there's been hundreds of thousands of people commenting on this on Twitter and just having an opinion on it. And the vast majority of them haven't read it. And to me, that's interesting. You've got journalists and others sort of commenting and calling him names, and they haven't even read his post. He wrote 14,000 words on it. It's a lot. There's a lot going on there. So it's just been a whole storm this week for him.
Well, I find it very telling how most journalists, and they call themselves journalists. These so-called journalists, these reporters, are actually what I know you know who David Icke is. He has a good name for them. He calls them repeaters. I think I might have even mentioned this when I was talking to you guys the last time. And they're just kind of attack dogs. they're sent out to go after people. And in this case, especially, see, I'm kind of glad this happened. And I know that sounds messed up. I feel bad that poor Professor Tracy's getting dragged through the mud the way he is. He's a tough guy. I know he can handle it. But I'm kind of glad this happened because it backs up everything that he has said in his class. I know he's explained how the media works and how it's controlled and how they attack people with altering opinions and things like that. Here's a prime example of it. What better example than for him to be the example, you know what I mean? The physical embodiment of what he's been trying to teach you guys. Because he could show you a documentary about somebody going through it and you go, yeah. But like you said, you don't really learn until you see somebody you personally know go through this and get raked over the coals for no reason at all. I mean, he had an opinion on his own personal blog.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to pause it right there because we got the break sneaking up on us. When we get back, I'm going to come right back in from break, and as soon as the music starts to fade down, I'm going to pick it up right where I'm leaving off. So don't go anywhere. And for time constraint reasons, I'm not even going to give it an intro. I'm just going to let the music fade down. I'm going to go right back into the interview because I want to try to squeeze the entire thing into the second hour. So don't go anywhere. More with Ryan Cortes on the mainstream media attack on Professor James Tracy. We'll be right back.
He's a free person. The last time I checked, the First Amendment is still in effect.
To be fair, I don't think people are saying that he should be thrown in jail for this. I think people are angry about what he said. But it's such a teaching moment, like you said. I mean, he teaches us about conspiracy panics and just sort of the reaction to somebody who gets labeled a conspiracy theorist. And everything they said gets kind of thrown out the window, and the focus is on, well, you're crazy. And I thought one interesting example, I talked to one student who was walking around campus, and mind you, classes started last week. So this class he was going to, it's the first time he's meeting him. And this student had a class with Professor Tracy. And a TV reporter is wandering around campus and sees the student and says, hey, do you know who Professor Tracy is? I want to talk to some students that know him. And he said, oh, funny you should ask. I'm going to his class. This student had no idea about what Professor Tracy wrote. So the reporter tells him, and she just frames it as, well, he thinks Newtown didn't exist. And this angers the student to the point where he walks into the class with the reporter tailing him, and he confronts Professor Tracy about it and says, do you really believe that this didn't happen? I don't understand that. And he explains the whole post basically to the student. And the student just sits down and is like, wow, okay. I mean, I might not agree with your take on that, but I understand there's nuance there, right? There's more to it than just this headline. And that got lost in all the reporting. There wasn't time to do that. It's a lot easier to just say, this guy thinks it's a hoax, he's a nut. So I thought that was interesting. There's a lot of young kids who read the headlines and called them names, and you meet them and you talk to them, and it's different. And it just makes you think, that's all.
And it shows you guys it gives you another example of something I brought up. Remember I said last time I spoke to you guys, I brought up appeal to emotion. And I said the media, and I only briefly covered it, but it kind of explained how the media uses it. Well, that's a perfect example. Do you see what they did? They use a certain headline and something that grabs attention and grabs your emotions and allows them to get you wound up, and the kid marched in to confront him. And then Professor Tracy did what he does best. He just sat there and talked and used his brain, used logic and reasoning, and the kid went, oh, okay. And then, I might not agree totally, but that's something that should be looked into. Okay. Which at the end of all this, that's what this has done. All this media attention, they would have been better off leaving him alone and not saying a thing to him, because now at least his blog, his article has created this national conversation. It's not even just a local Florida conversation. It is now national. And of course, you're going to get the media that goes up to somebody and says, how do you feel about this? There's this crazy college professor down in Florida that says that the shooting didn't happen, and they go to somebody in the town council or whatever, and they say, oh, that person should be fired. He's teaching that to his students. But that's not the case at all. In fact, it's not even what he said. But like you said, they just take it and they run with it. And I've said this on my broadcast before to the listeners. If it bleeds, it leads. They don't really care if it's actually factual. And remember this. The Supreme Court has ruled that the mainstream media doesn't have to report any actual factual information to you as news. They can lie to you, tell you it's news, and they're not liable for it. They can't get in any trouble whatsoever for it. The Supreme Court's already ruled on it. So what's to stop them from coming on and just telling you complete lies? And of course, this is all an attack on Professor Tracy. Every time you see any type of college professor that speaks out and speaks truth and doesn't toe the line, he gets attacked. And, I have a big problem with that. I have a big problem with him being attacked because he says something that's perhaps uncomfortable or doesn't toe the party line. How about all these college professors out there that speak openly to their classes about getting rid of the Constitution or, completely nullifying it and taking away people's rights? And I know this stuff gets pumped out into the young children's minds in college. I know it does. I've seen it. I know people that are in college that have told me. They've shown me videos of professors saying things. I've seen it on YouTube. I've seen more than enough evidence to know that there's a lot of different ideas out there. So how come those people can spew their garbage, but Professor Tracy goes home, he's not on FAU time, goes home and just postulates on a blog with, pointing to some facts this is a little shady and we should look into this. That's all. It's a little weird. We need to look into this because this is a big issue. I think what he's doing is a service to the families and the people that died. Don't you? I mean, if that was my family and somebody in my family was killed in a shooting like this and the mainstream media and the police had it all wrapped up with a nice little red bow in a week or two, and that was the official version, I wouldn't be happy with that. And I don't think he's doing anything wrong. Me personally, I don't think he's doing anything wrong. You're a student of the school. Put the fact that you're open-minded, whatever, put all that aside. As a student of the school, do you really think this reflects you in any negative way?
No, I don't. I think his opinion stands for itself. But that's how the media cycle works. It gets tied back to FAU. And that's one of the things I asked him about was just sort of the idea of, do you regret that fourth post? Because you could have said all those things you said otherwise. You could have said that there was missing questions and missing answers, and there's just stuff here that we don't have, and maybe we should look into that more. And you could have left out that other post with some of the things that you thought may have happened. Do you think you regret that? And he kind of looked at me and said, well, do you think that would have got the same reaction? And he's right. And he's a media professor who knows media very well. He's not surprised by the anger here. I think he's surprised by the amount of people. But, to me, what he wanted out of all this was for people to read his post and not agree with him, not say, I think it didn't happen or whatever. They just wanted, he just wanted people to read it and say, he's right. There's a lot of stuff missing here. Maybe we should look into this more. And then once I read and I look into it, I'll have my own conclusion and my own thoughts on what really happened. And it's not to say that the event didn't happen. I don't think he ever said that. He was just sort of pointing out the stuff that was missing.
No, and he speculated. A little bit that could have, in that direction. But he never ever said, he never came on and from what I've seen, it does not definitively say to me, it didn't happen. And of course, I've seen a lot of the interviews of what you're talking about. I've seen them on TV where they asked the one of the local students or whatever, and you hear, he should be fired. I don't think he shouldn't be able to he shouldn't be able to say that or teach that to kids or whatever. That's insensitive. Well, hold on a minute. All of a sudden now we need the PC police because of freedom of speech? Well, you might say something that offends somebody. So grow a pair. When you get into the real world, people don't walk around going, "Oh, I'm sorry, did I offend you?" That's not how things work. That's one of the reasons these kids that come out of colleges today, a lot of them, and of course, society is changing a little bit, but a lot of the kids that come out of colleges and universities today, their version of the real world isn't what the real world is. It's two different things. They're not really being prepared for the reality of the situation. Maybe in the future, if they get this, Brave New World, idiocy, zombie-like state of everybody going on, and it'll be easier and there'll be less culture shock for these kids when they get out.
That's the thing, though. It's not like Professor Tracy's walking up to that class and saying, "I think 9/11 never happened. I think Bin Laden's fishy." He doesn't talk like that.
No, I've been there. He doesn't speak like that at all in that class.
Well, that's what's interesting. If you read every single story written about him, not a single reporter took the time to sit in on a class. Don't you think that would be interesting? You're gonna write about him. No one's gonna sit on the class. That's not a good idea to see how he teaches. Because if you read his writing, that's how he teaches. It's sort of like, look at this. This is a little weird. this is a little odd too. What do you guys make of this? Is that fishy to you? It's not taught in a way where he's pounding down on these ideas to us. It's just not.
I actually give him credit for showing you guys both sides of the coin, because, like, him and I have talked, and he was telling me the last time I was chatting with him, he was...
I'm going to pause it right there, ladies and gentlemen, because the break's coming up. Again, same thing, coming back out of the break. I'm going to wait till the music fades down, and I'm just going to pick it up right where we're leaving off. So don't go anywhere. More with my interview with Ryan Cortes about the mainstream media's attack on Professor James Tracy. We'll be right back.
Tell me that one of the things he gave you guys was a book, and I don't remember the title of it, but it was basically it was like against conspiracy theories, like it was something, not for them. And that's balancing it out. I mean, obviously I've seen he sent me the copy of the curriculum. He sent me a copy of his syllabus, and I've seen what he has planned for the classes and stuff for you guys. And I think he goes about it in a really good way. I mean, I was impressed the way he laid it out, week by week and everything, and he broke things up, and he was very selective about what movies he screened in class and who he has come speak. I give him credit for what he does. I said it in class, I said it in the interview, and I'll say it again. It takes a brass set of balls for him to do what he does as a college professor. It really does.
Yeah, and I think the class is set up sort of interesting, like you said. I mean, it's set up almost in half, where you've got movies and stuff like that, readings that we'll watch and read. And the other half is discussion, and it's healthy. It's a bunch of people talking about their ideas, and he's not looking for you to agree with what he's presenting. He's looking for you to think. When he gets turned off is when your mind stops working, when you're not thinking. And I think he's okay if you raise your hand and say, I disagree. I've written papers for his class where I'm like, yeah, I don't know, I'm not in on that one. But it's thoughtful, and he just wants your mind to raise. He's big on the phrase, don't be a sheep. Don't just take everything that gets said to you and believe it. Dig a little deeper, ask some questions. And there's just that element there where people don't want to be wrong on anything, and the idea of pointing out that the media is wrong on coverage offends people for some reason. I don't really understand that.
It's kind of, again, it's kind of surreal how he teaches a class about media, and here you have journalists coming in and critiquing him, and they don't even realize it, but they're making his case for him about how inept the media is nowadays. They really are, because they're showing you guys as the students who know Professor Tracy and understand the class and understand things right now, and you guys have kind of a better understanding because of the movies and the topics and the guests. So now you're looking back, and now at the end of the class, you get to experience this whole mess, and you go, wow, he is right. There really is a problem. There really is something wrong. I mean, again, if the powers that shouldn't be, whoever wanted to go after him, whoever wanted to fry him, whatever moron in the media, whoever it was, whoever decided to go after him, all they did was, A, bring about a national conversation about this topic, which is good, and B, prove his point, not only to all his students, but anybody in future classes, because he'll be able to use this as a teaching device. Anybody that has a brain in their head and sees this understands that they're going after him. They're frying him. They really are. It really, this thing serves as this whole escapade, this whole mess serves as a giant teaching tool. I think it really, at the end of the day, I think it serves to it. If they keep going after him, I guess there are people calling for his job, and I know FAU has said, look, it was on his personal blog. He wasn't representing FAU, so there's nothing we can do. But I just hope he's okay, and that career-wise he doesn't get screwed with. You know what I mean? I hope that...
He's got nothing to worry about. He's not going to get fired for this. He even told me a cool anecdote about one of the reporters that first tried to contact him, tried to get in the door with a line that just wasn't true. He told Tracy, well, I heard there's been a lot of people upset and they want you fired, and there's talk in the administration that you're going to... And he was just sort of like, well, who? And Chris Robay, who I talked to, is president of the faculty union. He'd be the guy that they're complaining to, and he was dumbfounded by it. Couldn't understand it. He hasn't heard anything of the like. And Tracy's known on campus as one of the only professors with, the balls to say what he says, and he's tenured. He's not afraid to be quoted on anything. And even at FAU, it's a nightmare to get interviews. You got to go through media relations for everything. And he's one of the only professors who you can walk into his office and interview him and not go through a PR person. I mean, it's just...
Do you think a lot of this... this spin where you're seeing in certain articles or reports or whatever, there's people calling for him to get fired. Do you think a lot of that is just crap? You think a lot of it's either made up or inflated and blown out of proportion?
Absolutely. And I mean, if you look at the reporters covering this story, think about it. I mean, you've got TV reporters who come to campus for 10 minutes, they interview him on TV, they get their TV moment, they shame him into the question of, what do you have to apologize for? Are you going to get fired? And they leave campus. I mean, they're not talking to people who run this place. They're not talking to the students to go to his classes. They're not in the know here. I mean, if you really want to write about something like that, you have to know the situation, which is why when I saw this all happening, I was like, I'm in a unique position to write about this. I've taken 3 of his classes. I know the students who are taking his class now. I know the people above him that could fire him if they wanted to. None of that's true. But, I mean, the reporting's lazy. And, I mean, there's elements here. I don't think the reporting's lazy because they want to be mean. I think it's just part of the media cycle. It's a poor media cycle. And it's just, we've got 30 minutes to do a story. We got to do X and Y. Let's go get them on camera and do this and leave. And, I mean, that's just what the media has evolved into. There's not enough time and nuance to go do what I did. And that, it's just not.
Well, yeah, no, you're right, because you have cycles, you have advertising cycle and everything else, and you have to, even the alternative media, the quote unquote alternative media, falls into that. They have even like an alternative news cycle, as it were, and it's very easy to fall prey into almost like a routine of and a lot of people do it because a routine is good and it keeps people on point and stuff. But I don't think they realize that you end up creating this bigger, larger cycle of every day the news comes out at this certain time, and that's why I've seen news reporters dealing with them like when it comes to protests and stuff down here. Right, when I used to go cover protests, and I would see the news reporters come down and cover a protest. I used to sit and chat with them and pick their brains, and they explained to me. They were like, "Yeah, we got to go cover something else in like 20 minutes," and they would run around, get all the audio for the or in video recorded. That they would do their pieces, and then while they were driving around, the engineers in the van cutting it all up, and then they if they're out at like spot 3 or 4 for the day, they can remotely send it to the station from where they are on the and she'll be doing another report. They have maybe like a female reporter out there, and she's sitting there on camera doing a report, and they can be sending out a recorded piece and then go back to her live. I mean, I've seen them do it. The media nowadays is like this. It's instant entertainment. It's on your phone. It's on your computer. You can't get away from it, dude. There's news everywhere. I mean, you can't go to the bathroom and take a leak anymore. There's even restaurants where they have, news or in TVs and garbage playing above the urinals and stuff. Even in sports bars, you can't go anywhere where there's not a television or some sort of media related device. And there's always 24-hour news cycles and everything. And that's how they've taken over Twitter. They've taken over Facebook. It's like you said, it's done so that they have to put everything out like, 6 o'clock, got to get it out. 6 o'clock news at 6:30. Got that new commercial we got to air. And it's all about the money. It's more about it becomes at the end of the day more about the advertisers and getting viewership, because you have this advertiser and you want to get the next one, and then you'll be able to sell it for more because look, our viewership went up, and then you're not really caring about the news anymore. And then that's what we have today. So we really don't have reporters anymore, do we? We have. Like Ike says, we have repeaters. They just say what they're told. And now, again, this is why, as I said before, this serves as a huge teaching example for you guys. I mean, I really think this is going to end up being a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of the kids who know him and have taken the class, they keep saying, everyone that I interviewed, they keep saying, look, anyone who says about Professor Tracy, please just take his class. And that's simplified. But it's true. And it's hard to cover this and write about him and form an opinion without talking to the dude and without seeing how he interacts with the students and all that sort of stuff. He makes you think. And his take on the media, and and that sort of thing. I get asked a lot, you're a journalism major, and he bashes the media. Does that make you discouraged from wanting to work in the media? And my answer is always no. It makes you want to go change media. It makes you want to make it better. And I think that's a good thing. I think there's a lot of good that he does.
There's no reason to hate media. There's no reason to get mad at, there's a reason to get mad at the status quo as it is now, but it doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that the business model and the way things are done today are garbage, and it needs to be changed up. And inspiring the younger generations to be that change of the future is important. Otherwise, we're going to continue with the status quo.
All right, I'm going to pause it right there, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back, again, same thing. Coming into the final segment, just going to pick up with the audio so I can squeeze in as much as I can. We're almost done with the interview, so stay tuned. Final segment. Don't go anywhere.
And I know it's much easier for people to not look into this stuff and worry about Dancing with the Stars, but it is important. I got to tell you, man, every time I've spoken at his class, every time I go, and every time I see a new class there, it's amazing to me because I remember the first time there, he struggled the first time I was there. At least by the time I got there was maybe 10 people, 9 or 10 people in the class, something like that. It was very small. And now there's way more. The classroom was packed the last time I was there. And that made me feel good because I was like, wow, there's a lot of people that care about what's going on and they want to at least look into it. Doesn't mean that they think 9/11 was an inside job or the Oklahoma City bombing was an inside job or any of this other stuff. Doesn't mean that that's what they think. It just means that they're willing to open their mind and sit and listen to somebody. You've taken his class. He doesn't sit and tell you guys this is what you should think, right? He just says to you, he presents information and says, this is what it is. Take it for what it's worth. It is what it is, right? He doesn't force anything down your throat.
No, of course not. And I think even worst case, if all you take from his class is simply to just question things a little bit more, I think that's such a good thing. I don't think you get that enough from professors. I think the way the school system is designed, everything should be neat. It should be 2 + 2 = 4, and we shouldn't question anything, and that's what we're conditioned for. And even if you don't agree with anything he says, and believe me, there are students who take his class and they're not in on the conspiracies. At the very least, they're thinking more. The next time a story comes out, they're not believing everything about it. They want more details, and that's healthy. He's creating a good culture of new journalism, which is good.
Which is, it's actually really important because the culture we have now in journalism is horrible. So, as a student of the class itself, as someone who's taken his class multiple times and sat in there, what would you say to a reporter, one of these mainstream media puppets like what you saw, if they came up to you and they actually gave you a chance and they asked you your opinion, what would you say if you had the chance about Professor Tracy's class and Professor Tracy?
Well, I was interviewed by Broward New Times down here, similar to what you're asking, and I basically said, what I've said in the whole interview, which is just there's more here, and a lot of the stuff that he teaches and the way he teaches cultivates a lot of good things, and it makes you think. And I remember sitting in his class, and he would come up to the front of the room, and we would start talking, and I'd be like, you got to be kidding me. 9/11? What do you mean? What do you mean that it may not have happened like that? I don't understand. And the more things you watch and the more you hear, you question it yourself. And that's important because you don't think, along the same timeline. You don't think that there was a total conspiracy, but at the least, if you're just thinking about it and you're thinking there's not enough there, that's good. You got more people questioning it. There should be more people questioning the media in terms of a watchdog form. Not enough people question the media. It's one of those end-all, be-all things. You write it, we read it, it's over. And that's not how it should work. It should be an interactive thing where the media writes something and we say, I don't know. And that would force more media members to go cover the same thing and cover it differently. Think about all the Tracy stories you read. Take away the byline and the name of the publication. Can you really tell the difference between all of them? It's more or less the same story.
So, as a student of his class and as someone who's open-minded and who's been exposed to this stuff, what do you think?
Of?
All of this. The craziness that is the information that has been presented to you. Like, I know he's presented chemtrails, mind control, 9/11, Oklahoma City, that type of stuff. Now that you've been presented this type of information, what do you make of it? What's your take on it? What do you think?
my take on it is if you want to think differently, you better not label yourself a conspiracy theorist. That's an easy way for people to dismiss you. I think you got to think outside the box, and you got to be mindful of people taking you down just because you're thinking. Nobody wants to be told they're wrong on a media story, and I don't think that's the point of media. I think the point of media is to get it right, not to just write your story and have us read and react to it. So I think when you see all that stuff happen to Tracy and you can see the laziness in the reporting, it just makes you think more. You know, it makes you understand how media works, and it makes you, you know, the next time I tackle a story, I want to dig even deeper. You know, I want to spend more time with the people involved, and, you know, at the very least, I think that part of the story is going to cultivate some good things out of it, even if he's got to deal with the bad parts of it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of this, I do think there will be a positive outcome. Like I said, at the very least, you guys, this is almost like a huge bonus for at the end of the class. You guys got to experience and see the very man who was trying to teach you and show you just to think outside the box. Really, all he is, I mean, he's not trying to brainwash you guys. And this is my take on it. All he's trying to do is act as a guide. He opened the door and said, "Hey, go check it out," and then you formulate your own opinion, which is what you're supposed to do. He's leading by example, and hopefully his class, and your fellow classmates will take this, and you guys this will forever leave a mark on you guys, and you guys can take this and run with it and make positive change in the media and in the rest of the world, and, you know, in whatever you do. Because now you guys, this has solidified, if nothing else, everything he said to you guys. You know, they literally, without even, as I said, the media should have left him alone, because without even realizing it, I think that they've completely solidified and validated everything he's taught you guys through his whole class by just doing what they're doing. It's like they literally defeated their own argument by doing what they did. At least to you guys, to the class, because you see, you know what I mean? It's like, did he show you guys They Live? Do you ever hear that movie, the John Carpenter movie, They Live? Okay. If you get a chance, go watch the movie. It'll actually blow your mind. You'll realize that John Carpenter was trying to tell everybody something. When the movie came out, it's like a cult classic. Basically, in the movie, Rowdy Piper stumbles upon a pair of sunglasses. As he's walking around, when you put the glasses on and you see the world, it's black and white. And as you're looking around, you see billboards, and they say, obey, or, you know, like he looks at money, and it's just a blank piece of paper, and it says, "This is your God." And it's all like subliminal stuff that's hidden. Well, the glasses allow them to see the subliminal stuff. And then he starts to realize that not everybody's human. Some of them are aliens. And it's these aliens that they look like humans, and they mimic themselves as humans, but they actually rule the planet. And it's this sinister conspiracy. And basically the idea, the reason I say it's like They Live is because in the end of the movie, the only way the human race was woken up was they broke into the news station, because the news stations were putting out a signal through their news broadcasts that kept everybody baffled and retarded and, you know, buying into everything and doing what they do. And they killed the signal, and as soon as they killed the signal, everybody could see what they were. Everybody could see things. They looked around and they could see the billboard said, you know, consume, obey. They looked at the money and they could see it said, "This is your God." They looked at magazines and it said, "Obey, obey, obey," you know, procreate, have children.
Right.
And at the end, everybody kind of, you know, that signal got blocked. They woke up. So it's going to have the same effect. You guys are now going to have those sunglasses on because of his class and because of the experience of what the media did with this. You guys are now going to have that permanent pair of They Live sunglasses on. And after you watch the movie, mark my words, after you watch the movie, you're going to be like, wow. It's just like the Matrix. Once you understand the hidden things in the Matrix, because the Matrix is actually an allegory to tell you what's going on. All of them, all three. And when you understand all three parts of the movie, and you start, it's the same thing. Trust me, you're a very smart individual, and you're already pretty awakened and aware as to what's going on, and you're already willing to think outside the box, go watch the movie They Live, and then send me I want you to send me an email after you watch it and tell me your thoughts on it. But yeah, that's pretty much what's happening to you guys is the the whole, you guys are wearing the sunglasses and you're seeing what's going on. What are your final thoughts on this whole matter, media in general, anything? What are your final thoughts?
I'm just interested to see what else happens to him. I want to see when this story dies, because the way the media cycle usually works, you swoop in, you do your story, you swoop out, you leave. I want to see if this goes away in a week, if we're going to remember Professor Tracy in 2 months, or if the only people who are going to remember him are the people who take his class. And if the only people who learn from this are the people who know him and take his class, that stinks. Hopefully more people will see what's going on and see the nuances in it. But you could be doubtful about that just because so few people have actually read everything on that website. It's easier to just read the headline. So I'm curious to see how many more legs and how much longer the story goes on.
And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank Ryan Cortes for giving me the interview, and I've taken about a half hour, 35 minutes out of his life to give me the interview. The kid's really busy. He's doing a lot of things, and he set the time aside to sit down and talk to me in defense of Professor Tracy for this broadcast. So big thanks to Ryan Cortes. Check him out, Lifestyle Magazine, and he's the editor over at the university paper over there at FAU. I want to give a big shout out to Professor James Tracy. You can check his class out at FAU. Culture of Conspiracy. I urge you, if you're a college student over at FAU, take his class if you haven't yet. I guarantee you'll learn something. Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you tune in tomorrow night. Lena Seneca is going to be on 10 to midnight Eastern Standard. And stay tuned for Joe and Tim, Conspiracy Chronicles, and Ken. I'm out of here.